Hey, my name is Beau, founder of perfectlyatpeace.com, and I have a good question from one of our viewers, Kumar, and I wanted to answer this question today because I think the answer would help a lot of our viewers as well. And his question is, from one person to another, there is much ambiguity regarding what to follow and what not to, or what not to do. Some say to do something, and there are others who say to do it their way instead. He gives an example of how some people say coconut oil is good for you and that you should eat coconut oil. And then there are other people that say coconut oil is bad for you and it causes heart disease or it causes problems. And he's wondering, how do we live in this world with all of these apparent contradictions and dualities? And it seems kind of difficult to make a decision maybe on what to do and what path to follow. And I totally understand this dilemma because it's something that I've faced for a long time. And the first thing that I would like to say is that above all else, I would say trust your intuition and what you feel is right, and also be willing to experiment if it seems reasonable to you to experiment with something. Experiment with different life philosophies, with different diets, maybe if it's coming to, when it comes to your health, different spiritual paths, different spiritual teachings if you're following a spiritual path of some kind, different personal development strategies, or whatever you're working on in your life. Be willing to go through an experimental phase where you're just trying many different things out and just trying to get a feel for each one, and try to see which one resonates with you, because there's no one single path for everyone. And that's where I think a lot of the confusion stems from, is because a lot of people are out there telling you that their path is the only path and that this is right and those other ways are wrong, and they're in this duality of right and wrong. And the truth is, everyone is so unique that there is no one right path for everyone. There is no one spiritual path that is suitable for everyone. There's no one diet that is suitable for everyone. Everyone is unique, and so everyone needs to take a unique path. And so no one can really tell you exactly what you need to do in your life. There are plenty of leaders out there who are willing to offer their path and give you what they think is right, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be right for you. But you should maintain an open mind and be willing to try things out on your own. For example, try a vegan diet and try it for 90 days and see how you feel after those 90 days. Do you feel better? Okay, maybe you want to continue on that path since you're feeling better. And then continue it for a year. And then, are you still feeling good after a year? Then keep going. Go down the path that makes you feel the best. That's what I would say first and foremost. And in addition to that advice, I would also like to point you to something very valuable, something that's been extremely valuable for me, and I think it's an extremely valuable thing for humanity. But unfortunately, it hasn't really spread that much in the world yet, and not a lot of people know about this. But there's something that's called applied kinesiology, and you can look into it a little bit. There's many different ways that people are using applied kinesiology. It's often used, I think, with health practitioners, and they can use it to determine like if you're allergic to a certain food. And the way it works is, I'll just give you one quick example. Let's say there's a food that you think you might be allergic to. Let's say peanuts. You think you're allergic to peanuts. So what they would do is they would take some peanuts, a bag of peanuts or something. They would have you hold it in your hand, and they would put it over your heart. Now, while you're holding that object or that food or whatever over your heart, you would put your arm out to the side, and they would test your muscle strength. And they would be able to determine whether that food was damaging to your body or whether it was healthy for your body based on the strength of your muscle. So if it's damaging to your body, your muscle would go weak and your arm would go down very easily. But if it was strengthening for your body, if it was healthy for you, your arm would stay very strong. So that's just one way to test it, with muscle strength. But there's also different ways that they can do it. They can do it by measuring the size of your pupils and your pupil dilation. They can hook you up to some wires and measure your brain waves and determine it that way. But basically, the body has this innate ability to respond to what is good or not good for it. So there's this innate intelligence within all of us, within human consciousness, you might say, that is able to discern what is good for us and what is not. And this can extend far beyond just physical things. You can also measure the energy of different teachings, different intellectual ideas and philosophies, and you can measure spiritual paths. And there's actually a scale from 0 to 1,000, and you can measure the energy of different objects, ideas, philosophies, books, movies, people. You can measure their level of consciousness on a scale of 0 to 1,000. And you use applied kinesiology to do this sort of testing. Now, it does require some understanding and some practice to do this, to use this method, but I want to point you to a resource, something that changed my life in incredible ways many years ago and continues to influence and shape my life in a positive direction to this day, and that is the work of Dr. David R. Hawkins, specifically the book Power versus Force. He wrote a book, Power versus Force, which is like one of the first books he wrote, I think. And he has many more books than that, which I recommend all of them. But I would recommend you start with Power versus Force, because in that book he explains the method of applied kinesiology and the scale of consciousness and how profound the implications of this are when you really understand how it can be used in your life. But basically, it's like a way to measure how beneficial something is for you. For example, you can use this if you're going to go down, if you're going to learn from, say, a spiritual teacher. You can calibrate the level of consciousness of those teachings before you go down that path. So you could calibrate to see if those teachings are true and valid, and you can also see the level of truth of that teaching. And it's really like a scale of energy. You can kind of think of it like everything in the universe is energy. And, even all scientists would agree with that. Everything is energy. And so there is an energy field of consciousness that is sort of enveloped in everything. And everything can be measured. And everything has a certain level of consciousness or a level of energy that determines how powerful that thing is and how much of an influence it can have on you or other people or the world at large, how much of an influence it can have, whether it be a negative or positive influence. So it would take me many, many days to really go into detail and describe all of this, so I just recommend you go buy the book Power versus Force. There's also an audio version of it, I think. You can get it on Amazon. Power versus Force by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And then I would recommend you look into his other work as well. So just to summarize really quick, how to make decisions in this world of ambiguity and people telling you to do one thing and other people telling you to do another. One, trust your intuition. Just try to get a feel for it instead of listening to maybe the logical, rational explanations for why something is good. Take that into account, yes, but also go inside, try to get quiet for a minute, quiet down the mind, and just see how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that path? Or whatever you're thinking or considering about doing. And then two, be willing to experiment if it seems reasonable. Experiment. Don't just go based on what other people say. Even if there's lots of scientific evidence about something that says it's good for you, science has been proven wrong over and over again. Every century, science is basically rewriting the book and saying, no, we were wrong about that. And then, 20 years later, a new discovery comes out and they say, oh, that thing we said 20 years ago, well, we were actually wrong about that. It's actually more like this. So even science is not a reliable way to determine if something is right for you, or it's right or wrong, or it's good or bad. So sometimes we have to be willing to just experiment and see. And also, there is no one size fits all path for everyone. So be willing to experiment and see what's right for you. And then finally, use applied kinesiology to really get right to the core of it and determine if something is positive or negative, determine if something is true or false, determine how much of a positive influence something can have on your life, whether it be a diet, a book you want to read, a spiritual path you want to follow, an online course you want to take, a career decision that you're not sure which career path to take. You can use applied kinesiology to measure and test all of these different things, and it's quite fascinating. So I really recommend you look into that. And that's all for this video. I hope it's been helpful. If you have any questions that you want me to answer in a future episode, just post them in the comments below and I'll get to your question as soon as I can. Okay, thank you for watching and I'll talk to you soon.